for our website, and we'll be posting that up there as soon as I get the email feed, which is probably in 24 hours. And what we're going to do is have a series of introductions and opening comments from invited participants. We're asking people to keep their phones or monitors on muted until we get to the question section. So until then, oops, sorry. Counselor, if you would unmute yourself and, oh, I'm sorry. So we'll be giving a presentation, and then we'll be taking comments and discussion and questions. If we can answer them, we will. If not, if you could also submit via email to planning@cobma.us. We'll take questions that way. And Counselor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rob. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Thompson, and I am the Ward 5 City Councilor. I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I'm going to begin with the requisite Zoom statement that if everyone could please mute their device until they are speaking. As Rob said, this meeting is being recorded by the BCA. It will be available on YouTube. It will also be available on my City Councilor Facebook page. So it will be available for review for anyone who is not able to attend this evening's meeting. Now, this planning process is one that is engaged in by many public officials. I wanted to recognize some of those officials who are on the call this evening. We have Senator Mike Brady with us. We have State Representative Michelle Dubois. I see that Councilor at Large Wynn Farwell, Councilor at Large Rita Mendez, and Ward 4 City Councilor Suna Castro is with us this evening. So thank you all for being here. Now, it is my intent tonight to continue the conversation regarding the development of the Christo's property in an open and transparent manner. Now, I look forward to hearing your feedback and answering your questions to the best of our ability. We may not all agree on what type of project is ultimately developed on this property, but I do hope we can agree to all work together for the best outcome for our city. I want to discuss a brief history of the Christo's property. In 2013, Mr. Christo sold his restaurant and his property to the state with an expectation that Massasoit Community College would expand their campus onto this property. With the change from the Patrick administration to the Baker administration, those plans fell through. In 2018, the Massasoit Conference Center was closed due to unprofitability. Currently, DCAM, which is the state entity in charge of state-owned property, is now seeking to sell the property, with the proceeds going to Massasoit to help finance Massasoit's expansion on their campus. Special legislation is currently working its way through the state legislature to elicit requests for proposals to sell this property. A little more on that shortly. Now, as the state moves forward with their process, the city is proceeding forward with our own process to plan for the development of the Christo's lot. Now, even though the state owns the property and will ultimately sell the property, the city of Brockton still retains a great amount of control over the property. We control the property through our ability to zone the area to meet the city's goals. We also retain control through the planning and development process in which we are engaging in now. It is the city's goal to have a development plan in place for the Christo's lot so that any developer who bids on the property will understand what conditions are placed on the property for development. Now, to speak about the special legislation that is currently moving through the state legislature, I've asked Senator Brady to give an update to everyone regarding that legislation. Senator Brady, if you're available.
Thank you, Councilor Thompson, and I appreciate you hosting this meeting and everybody who was able to attend on the Zoom or live at the site, I believe. So you gave a great overview of how this came to be. Back on February 11, 2019, once the governor had different plans for the property, I'm talking about Governor Baker, Massasoit they didn't get the funds to build the Allied Health Center, which we all were in favor of, at the old Christo's restaurant site. So they met with our delegation on February 11, 2019. There was a meeting at Massasoit with the delegation. I had another commitment, so I sent my chief of staff to the meeting, but the three representatives were at that meeting, and the Massasoit president discussed the possibility of the legislation to sell the former Christo's property and the proceeds going into a trust that Massasoit could use for building projects and maintenance of their existing property on the campus. On April 8th of 2019, the first draft of the bill was sent to my office, and my chief of staff submitted it to Senate Council for review, as the case with all potential legislation. Over the next 2 months, the legislation went back and forth multiple times from Senate Council, my office, Massasoit, and DCAM to review potential language changes and questions. Then Representative Dubois asked through her office to my chief of staff for a copy of the draft of the legislation, which my chief of staff sent to Rep. Dubois' office. After some time, Rep. Dubois then asked for some changes. These changes were sent to Senate Council and added to the draft of the legislation. On June 28, 2019, Rep. Dubois asked in an email to Al from my office whether the changes were made. She was sent a copy of the red line bill indicating changes which she had then asked for. Over the next 2 months, the legislation went back and forth multiple times from Senate Council, my office, Massasoit, DCAM, back and forth for review with potential language changes and questions. On August 30th of 2019, Massasoit indicated in an email that they were happy with the version of the legislation that was before them, and in an email sent to the delegation asking for co-sponsorships, which Rep. Cronin and Cassie both gave their support in co-sponsorships of this legislation. On September 6, 2019, I filed the legislation, and along with the co-sponsors, Rep. Cronin and Cassie, the bill was assigned to the Joint Committee on State Administration and Regulatory Oversight. On September 14th, we met with a representative of the Building Trades Council who suggested that the use of the prevailing wage be included in the final documentation. And I submitted this request to the committee, who were then in control of the legislation. Over the next 4 months, Rep. Dubois drafted more changes she insisted be included in the bill. These changes were submitted to the committee by myself. The committee responded that there would be ample time during and after the hearings to amend the legislation. The bill was brought on January 27th to a public hearing by the Joint Committee on State Administration and Regulatory Oversight. During the hearing, the delegation, President Glickman, Mayor Sullivan, all testified. Rep. Dubois and our other colleagues with their proposed changes that she had requested for September 6th bill filing. After the hearing, I communicated with the Senate and House by phone and an email asking for and submitting written text of the changes that Rep. Dubois proposed be added to the bill as reported out. On May 18th, 2020, the bill was reported out of committee unanimously and sent to Senate Ways and Means without all of Rep. Dubois' changes. When asked why Rep. Dubois' changes were not included in the version of the legislation as reported out favorably, they replied with the following. Hope all is well needs considered. This is Patrick from Chair Gregoire's office. She's a chairwoman. We are reviewing Senate 2352, and the chair asks that I send you a summary of the amendments proposed by Rep. Dubois. Amendment lines 4 and 62, adding the mayor of Brockton bill out favorably. DCAM always consults with municipalities when doing any land conveyances. These bills typically name the municipality and not the chief executive. The city retains control of zoning for land use. This is therefore not necessary. Amendments section E and F, these included an advisory committee and analysis by Old Colony Planning Council as well. The amendment proposes funding and analysis with the proceeds of the sale, which is obviously not workable. An advisory committee is redundant because the city maintains right of first purchase and zoning control and can hold public hearings regarding land use and other public concerns, which you mentioned, Councilor Thompson. Amendment section N requires prevailing wage for public lease project. This is not needed because any public building project or public lease included by Massasoit of the City of Brockton is subject already to the prevailing wage. Senator Brady, myself, then approached Senate Ways and Means with a proposal that repertoire changes be implemented. On June 29th, 2020, the Committee on Senate Ways and Means reported the bill out favorably, recommended that it ought to pass with amendment. This amendment that was included was primarily grammatical. The bill was passed by the Senate to be engrossed. Then the bill was referred to the House Committee on Ways and Means. In the name of the bill is an act authorizing the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance to dispose of certain parcels of land in the city of Brockton. And these parcels are located at 770 and 782 Crescent Street in the city of Brockton, which basically includes the old Christo's restaurant site, the land that goes back to Beaumont Avenue in the Massasoit Conference Center, and the land, therefore, in the back. So it now sits in the House Ways and Means Committee. And that's where everything stands.
Thank you, Senator Brady, for that update. So I'd like to move forward and at this time introduce Rob May, who is the City of Brockton's Director of Planning and Economic Development. Rob and I have been working on this matter for quite some time now, and Rob, the city hired the architectural firm of Harriman to sketch out some development scenarios, and we're going to proceed with a presentation of those scenarios right now. Thank you, Rob, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Councilor. We all are living in some very interesting times right now because of COVID. That makes having public meetings very, very difficult. And so we thought that we would try to give this process a go. We have had, as a community, whether they're meetings sponsored by Representative Dubois or other meetings that the city has held, we have had some public meetings on this process, and we have taken a lot of those ideas and tried to put them into 5 different redevelopment scenarios. And it's based on uses that we've heard from the community and uses that have been somewhat qualified by the Urban Land Institute, which is a large trade association representing property owners, property developers, lawyers, and or real estate lawyers, and other similar type of people who have sort of a finger on the pulse of what is workable, what is economically viable in various communities through the metropolitan area. So we were able to take that and put that into these 5 development scenarios that we're going to talk about tonight. They are not intended to be a all or nothing kind of category. It's a place to start a discussion. You may like things in scenario 1 that you don't like in scenario 2, or we take a little of column A and a little of column B. But I think that by kicking these around in this public process, we will get something that is right for Brockton. So with that, I would like to have Carmelo share his screen. Carmelo is with the firm Harriman. and associate, and they have been working with the city and the counselor to put together these 5 strategies, 5 scenarios. So Camilla, thank you. You can unmute yourself, and or who's doing the talking and who's doing the, oh,
I'll kick off first. And
Emily
then
started, yeah.
Emily is doing the talking. All right.
Thank you, Rob. My name is Emily Ennis. I'm the Director of Planning for Harriman. And as Rob pointed out, we're here with Camilo Espatia, who is an urban designer and planner for Harriman. We're out of the Boston Urban Design and Planning Studio. Senator Brady, Representative Dubois, councilors, it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. I'm just going to kick off and talk you through the first few slides and what our responsibility was. And then Camilo is going to walk you through each of the individual scenarios. So Camilo, if you'll advance the slide. So our objective, as Rob pointed out, was to really try and visualize 5 different scenarios. And again, to stress that these are not specific development projects. They're a way of testing a combination of uses and a combination of different densities of use on these particular sites. So I'll start off by showing you what the sites are and talking to you a little bit about the characteristics. Next slide, please. And the next slide. So this is the area that we're looking at here, and you'll see the site itself is outlined in orange with the major streets that are connecting to the site in red and green and orange. And I'm going to explain why those colors are in a moment, but just to get yourself familiar with the site. Here it is in plan, and you're going to see a lot of the scenarios first in plans. So just to orient you, with Crescent Street on the bottom, Quincy to the right, Beaumont to the top, and Burrell Avenue, which will go through some reconfiguration depending on the scenario in the middle. So we looked at a couple of different elements of the context, just getting a general sense of what the existing development densities were in the area, what the characteristics of those developments were. So the single family, the commercial box in the area, the 4-story nursing home, and then the colors of the streets are the level of traffic relative to each other. It's important to note that these, the characterization of the streets as high, medium, or light traffic are not based on a traffic study. They are based on the amount of traffic, the width of the street, the uses of the street, and what's on them relative to each other. So I think we had an initial question on that. I wanted to clarify it. So if we go to the next slide. So I'm going to introduce quickly the scenarios and let Camilo take them through. So these are the 5 scenarios that we looked at. And again, they're based on different levels of residential density and some commercial uses. And you can see how the units and the square footage breaks out. As Camilo goes through it, you'll see the more specific breakout. We're going to walk you through what these uses are and how they're arranged. And Camilo is going to talk about the relationship of the different buildings to each other and to the neighborhood, and also the relationship of the different uses to each other and to the neighborhood. So with that, Camilo, it is all yours.
Thank you, Emily. So the first scenario, again, as we mentioned before, is just a study on those relationships rather than a project. It's just to test what fits in the on the site, and there are different configurations of density and building form. So this first one is a combination of 2 and 3 family homes on lots that range between 7,000 and around 12,000 square feet. In this case, we try to go with the 3 family units loaded towards Quincy, being like slightly busier than Beaumont or the west of the site, and moved the 2 family units towards the west and northwest corner of the site, where there are smaller residential developments to respect that type of scale. To access those units, we have added what we are now calling New Road, that is parallel to Burrell Avenue, that goes from Beaumont to Crescent Street. The next scenario, and so, sorry, something jumped on the screen. So you'll see the taller structures tend to respond to that busier dynamics of the roads adjacent to the site. We added a bus stop on all the options to emphasize that potential connectivity of the site with downtown Brockton or maybe the train stations, hoping that this is something that adds quality to the site. The architecture is very responsive to the local context, and it is basically trying to blend in. However, we are trying to incorporate principles of walkability and a streetscape that has lighting, buildings that provide some sort of edge on the sidewalk by being closer to the street, trying to move parking to the back or the side of the buildings rather than in front of them, and adding some sort of small front yard that activates the sidewalk, but that clearly differentiates private from public property. Then the next scenario is about a little denser multifamily, and it also tries to respond to those dynamics around the site. So for instance, buildings 1 and 6, the ones on Crescent, are 4 stories while the rest are 3 as we get closer to the residential uses north of the site. The buildings on Quincy are separated to provide breathing room and to encourage a relationship between the street and the interior of the development, and to provide sort of pocket parks or spaces for the community. And in fact, in this case, we took the opportunity to include a larger space that we call the heart of the development, with the idea of providing open spaces for the community with adequate features and proper scale as a healthy option for the community, not only inside the development, but maybe outside the development. So here you see how the buildings go from 4 stories to 3 as they get closer to the residential neighborhood, being sensitive to that smaller scale. We also incorporated balconies as part of the architecture to speak to that need of an adequate open spaces regardless of the type of unit that it's provided here on the site. And again, we're trying to place the buildings in a way that encourage walkability to enhance that connectivity to the neighborhood beyond our site with proper lighting, sidewalk widths, and landscape. Here's a sketch of what that open space could look like. Again, it's just a sketch, but it's just to get a sense of scale and how it can be programmed in different ways for community engagement, but also to provide healthy, richer spaces for the community, be it, again, the users of the development or maybe a wider audience in Brockton. Scenario 3 is also about multifamily, but with an addition of a potential 5,000 square feet of retail that can be used for convenience for the community. In this case, the retail is trying to respond to the commercial uses that you find south and east of the site, so that there's a sort of cohesive story on this portion of the site. In this case, the buildings on Quincy are closer together. And it is to study the effect of that building on the street and to test how it may improve walkability by providing a constant edge on the sidewalk rather than presenting gaps on that journey. On this one, you also see an option for open space, the heart of the layout, as we like to call it, again, to provide the community with healthy opportunities for public spaces. Here's how it looks with that commercial space anchoring the site. We're hoping for this building, whatever that may end up being, whatever type of retail we end up getting, to be something that activates the corner, hopefully with open facades that are inviting, that add quality to the streetscape. We decided to move the entrance to this retail vehicular entrance to access from Borough Avenue, not from Quincy, here in the middle of the site to alleviate potential traffic issues. Again, you see how buildings towards Quincy and Crescent here at sort of the edges of the rendering are 4 stories while we step down as we move north on the site. And a different configuration for the plaza, again, a sketch just on how it could look like, how it can be flexible to be used in different forums or seasons, and how it hopefully can be invited for the community. You can also see here the scale of the 3-story buildings being rather low and not imposing themselves on the side. Here's scenario 4, very similar to the previous concept. only the building on Quincy gets split into multiple smaller buildings to provide breathing room and a different relationship to the street. And maybe they're becoming pocket spaces that are complementary to that larger heart that we have in the center of the project that we've mentioned before, that you see here in yellow, south of the site. This scenario also has the corner retail component of 5,000 square feet with the access again from the center of the site. In this case, Borough Avenue gets diluted into parking. It doesn't really create a new road, it just becomes parking. So the transition from Crescent and Beaumont is slower and hopefully safer than an actual road, just because it's parking. And here's how it looks like, very similar to the previous scenario, again, with the buildings towards Quincy and Crescent being 4 stories, while we step back down as we move north of the site, getting closer to the smaller residential development outside of our site. And again, with the access of retail from Borough Avenue to avoid any complications of traffic here on Quincy and Crescent. And then finally, scenario 5, which is a combination of single, 2, and 3 family with a retail component in the corner as an anchoring building, and maybe it would be for convenience for the residential uses. Here, the 3 family units are loaded towards Quincy on what we are calling Lot A. The 2 family units are on Lot C and D. Sorry, the 2 families are on Lot B, and then single family units are on Lot C and D, also with the new road to access those units in the back. Again, the idea of building placement is the same. We're trying to have a pleasant pedestrian experience, and we're trying to respond to the surrounding context in terms of density and the dynamics on the site. And so here, it's what it looks like, very similar to the first scenario where we had the 2 and 3 families, only with the corner retail building on the site. Also looking for access from Borough Avenue to avoid traffic issues as much as possible. And so here's basically a summary of the development volumes that Emily described before, just to get a glimpse of all of them at the same time. And that's it for our presentation. We're open to any questions that you may have.
And again, just to stress that these are not specific projects, but merely a way of looking at how different volumes could fit on the site, their relationship to each other, and the relationship to the neighborhood itself. And with that, Rob, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. The property itself is currently zoned C2, which is a general business use, and that allows anything from, say, a strip shopping center to auto repair or used car sales. There's a wide variety of activities and uses that could happen in that area. Anything that would revolve around residential development would require either new zoning or a variance or special permit to make that happen. So one of the things that we wanted to discuss here is, and it looks like we just whipped through these 5 scenarios, is basically get people's responses to these to see what kind of development pattern the community is going to support. Anything, any new zoning would certainly have to go through city council. Any special permit or variance would have to go through the zoning board of appeals. All of those are going to require public hearings. And so if we're going to undertake something like that, then we need to really build some community support for whatever strategy we come up with through this process. So what I ask is that, Camilo, if you could go back to the existing conditions slide at the very beginning. One more back, I think. There, that's the density and scale. So you can see the single family residence behind it, the commercial in front, Massasoit College to the south, and here is our blank site through the middle. And if we could then advance one more slide, I think is our, no, there it is, the 5 scenarios. I think we might want to start with oh, this system doesn't have a chance to raise your hand, but if you could, if people want to make comments on video, we are welcoming that. You can also send your comments to planning@cobma.us or to Counselor Thompson, and he will make sure that they get to us. So I'm sorry, I'm used to doing this in a webinar format where people have to raise their hands. But I think if we could orderly, gosh.
Rob, if I can interrupt, they can raise hands.
Oh, they can raise hands. Okay.
Yeah, there's
thank
a
you.
couple, at least one up already.
I see Counselor Farwell. So if you want to unmute yourself, Counselor.
I think I'm unmuted. Am I?
Yes, you are.
All right, this is just preliminary information. I don't need to know all the names of the people here, but to the extent that this Zoom meeting has meaning, consensus, or some group coalesces around something, how many people do we have here other than public officials? How many people on the call other than public officials?
As a public official, I can tell you I have 3 people that are not public officials with me right now, and one that lives 2 houses down the road on Quincy Street who's very concerned about the issue.
All right, and how about Mr. May? Do we know, other than that count, do we have a?
We have 28 that are actually on the line, including Representative Dubois. Of those, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You froze for a minute.
I think there's very limited neighbors on the meeting. I didn't know about it until I saw the Facebook post from Mr. Thompson.
So 28, Mr. May, is that correct?
Counselor Lally. And then Senator Brady.
Okay, but extracting the public officials, how many neighborhood residents do we have then? 22?
I would say we have about 22 at this first go around, yes.
All right, and this is just a general question to a representative from Harriman. What criteria did you use unique to Brockton to come up with these 5 scenarios? Or is this general use of land in the most accommodating way in a city of this size and given parameters from the Urban Land Institute? In other words, I'm looking for something that made you focus on these 5 scenarios. You're on screen. Present here in Brockton, and that makes you think that these 5 are worthy of discussion.
So I'll start, and Camila, feel free to jump in if I miss something. The conversations for developing the 5 scenarios, we started off with Mr. May using the Urban Land Institute parameters. We've actually gone through, this is probably, I think, our 3rd and final round of scenarios for this presentation. I think we went through 2 other rounds of figuring out what types of
Land running along Quincy Street and Crescent Street need to.
Counselor?
Sorry. So it's about our 3rd go around of the different types and mixes of uses. Some of this is, as I said, based on the Urban Land Institute. Some of it is determined by the parcel size and the relationship of the existing streets to each other as we look at how to represent these buildings in terms of renderings for architectural detail. That's when we started to look at what was happening in Brockton now in terms of those mix of architectural elements. And Camila, feel free if you want to jump in more on the type of research you did for looking at the styles.
Yes. Yeah, so on top of the actual amount of units or development, we were also given the actual sizes for lots. So we even at some point had a scenario that had single family housing only. And I think it was determined that it wasn't economically feasible. But even if I may, if I may jump back to these lot sizes were ranges that were given to us. And then within the lot sizes, we were to respond to either very specifically to either 2-family or 3-family, or sometimes single family, which you do see in the last scenario. In terms of where to place them, again, I think the first one was probably the simplest one in terms of trying to place the building, simply because there were the existing lots and we just were subdividing them in these given sizes. But where to place the buildings in terms of scale, we did look at what was adjacent to the site, how busy or how sort of dynamic those relationships were, right? So if you look at the south, which is all these commercial buildings, is obviously very different than what happens to the north. So we figured whatever's taller, whatever might be or might seem busier, or the retail, for instance, was placed on this side of the site rather than on the maybe smaller scale. And then in terms of the architecture, we try to go with what's probably typical in New England. We try to be as least invasive as possible in terms of developing a building here that wasn't all glass or all metal panels. We're trying to be cognizant of something that is responsive to the context, so that it is not an alien development in Brockton.
So just to summarize, you looked at what is going on in New England, adapted it here in terms of architecture. I'm interested in how you got to the 2- and 3-family homes on particular lot sizes. This is one big lot now. Who made the decision of, who steered you in the direction of dividing up this property into specific lot sizes, which would then accommodate 2-family or 3-family units? How did you, who decided that?
So I will, and unless Rob, you want to take that? I'm happy
I'll
either way.
let you go. I'll let you go first.
Okay, let me go first. So our specific, I think it should be clear about Harriman's specific scope on this. Our scope was to develop these fit studies and these renderings. This was not a full-scale land use plan. It was based on the criteria that were given to us in conversations with Rob May, based on the ULI study. I'm going to let him talk to you in more detail about that. But just so you know that our scope was just to develop the scenarios and the renderings that went with the scenarios. So Rob, if you want to take it from there.
Before we,
Yeah.
before
So, Counselor,
we
very early on in this process, Counselor,
before we go to Mr. Mayor, I'd like to go back to
and the mayor.
Mr. May.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to go back to the young lady for a minute before we get to you.
Okay.
If we
Could other people mute themselves until it's time for them to speak, please?
And this will be my last question for now to her. So if she could come back on.
I'm here.
Okay. What were you told by the city through the planning department? What criteria were you given?
So the idea was to, as I said, test the different volumes. So we were to look at, Mila, I think explained it earlier, a combination of single family, 2-family, 3-family, multifamily. In order to do that, obviously you have to split up the site. So we went through a different round of analysis of how it made sense to split up the site based on those parameters, given the existing street development patterns and the relationship of the existing lots around the street. So we were trying to be very responsive to what's in the neighborhood now, but also responsive to the idea that we were doing scenarios at different development levels. So that single family all the way up to multifamily. We had a range. We didn't have a specific number of units for each type that we were trying to match, but a range, as Camilo said, we were given some lot sizes to test. And then work through several scenarios of how they would work potentially together. So it was an exercise, a fit study exercise to see what would work and now.
Thank you. I have what I need, and I'm finished. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I just wanted to add to that, the lot sizes that we're looking at here are based on what is in the adjacent neighborhood. Also, we had met with, or I had met with Councilor Thompson and the mayor over this whole planning process to help guide the development of the 5 different scenarios. Deb, I see your hand up.
Well, Rob, if I can before jump in quickly.
Is that Councilor Thompson? Yes.
Yes. So, Rob, also, I think it's important to add that the multifamily recommendation came from the Urban Land Institute's
Yeah.
TAP panel that visited this area back in September of 2019. It was through the recommendation, and also through recommendation of the University of Massachusetts Donahue Institute study that was also done on this property that kind of discussed the idea of what would fit into this property. So through the Urban Land Institute TAP panel, they recommended this type of multi-family development. So it was with that idea that we presented to have and kind of skid out for us. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we're at that time of the day when everybody is loading up on Netflix. So video and audio jump from time to time. So we apologize for that. Deb, and I don't know who Deb, it just says Deb's iPhone.
Deb Garland.
Oh, Deb Garland, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
You have the floor.
Well, thank you. Why wasn't biotech or medical usage looked at in this area, since we have a hospital right around the corner that is building everywhere in that neighborhood? First question. Second question is, I believe that the city had a moratorium that we were only allowed to build 2-story homes. So why are we looking for 3 and 4 and 5-story homes? And there's no retail. It's zoned retail. I don't get why we're building homes there. I think it should be a multi-use area. And when did we lose 3,000 students, Jeff? So those are my questions right now. Rob.
Oh, thank you, Deb. So the first question, why not medical office or life sciences?
Yes.
That is a question that we brought to both the Donahue Institute and the Urban Land Institute, which are these deep thinkers at Donahue Center or Donahue Institute. Given the location next to or near both Massasoit and with the hospital, one of the areas that both of those groups studied was medical office and life science. Now, given that, you would think that there would be a stronger market for that, but unfortunately, we can look at some of the development that's even happened right now on Center Street. We had a building right across the street from the hospital that, and I apologize, I don't remember the address, but it was originally built as a church. The church went bankrupt. The real estate company that held the mortgage repositioned and did a lot of changes to that building to make it available for medical office space. And they went 3 years trying to, I think it was 3 years, trying to market that building for medical office space. And they could not get a taker. Right now, the charter school has taken some of that space, if not all. But the point there being is that if we couldn't move existing medical office space the Donahue and ULI felt it would be difficult to add more medical space or more office space to the district. The same holds true for commercial property, for retail. I can't tell you how long the retail space has sat vacant on Crescent Street. It's just gotten a new owner finally. I think it was a Taco Bell at one time or something like that.
Yes.
But it took too long, and the market feels that if we add more retail space and we're having trouble getting rid of and filling up the space that we have, that and at a lower price, that it's going to be cost prohibitive for a developer to come in and build brand new space when we have less expensive space down the street that we can't fill up. So that doesn't mean that we can't have some retail in this development. And we show a couple of scenarios where there is retail. We could expand that. It's up to the group. It is zoned C2. That is a commercial use. Allows retail. It allows office. It also allows used car dealerships and auto mechanics. So that's why we're sitting here as part of this group to start this conversation. And this is going to go on for a while. And hopefully it will get to a vision that the community and city council can all be behind. And we work with DCAM on the disposition of this parcel. I'm sorry, I forgot what your third question was.
The question, that's the most important one, by the way.
Why housing?
I thought we had a moratorium in the city that we couldn't build higher than 2-family homes for sale. Because we had a multi-family home that burnt and killed after the deaths happened, they put through, I thought, a moratorium that we were not to build 3-family homes. Or are these just apartments?
I am unaware of that, and if any of the counselors know that, would you?
Maybe Wynn might remember that back to the 90s.
I think there is something about a 3-family over a certain height.
Yes.
But forgive me, I'd have to research the ordinances. I believe it was a fire up in Ward that precipitated that.
Yes, it was.
Well, we have
and
triple deckers throughout the city, and I'm not familiar with.
But they put a moratorium on not building more.
I'm not familiar with
So
that.
I think you need to check that.
I will. Thank you, Deb.
Thank you. And
Deb, if I could see your full question.
And the other question was, how did we lose the kids? Yeah.
So in my multiple conversations with our superintendent, comment, he meant because the issue of school density and context of the development that went around the state, that the issue of school density has come multiple times. So in conversations with Mike regarding school density, he informed me that since 2017, the city of Brockton lost 3,000 students in our school system. So Mr. Thomas told me that we're actually in need students, and so that's where my comments of the city of Brockton 3,000 students.
Okay. And
also just quickly on the issue of the 3 kids. I mean, I'm a member of I've been a member of the zone board for 2 years and then city council for that year. It's my understanding 3 decks would be built in a few different areas around the state. So if there were more area, I'm not aware of it. But
I think someone needs to I think someone just needs to look at that. That's all. I would be opposed to 3 and 4 family homes going there, but a 1 or 2 architecturally done well would be great. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. By the way, Deb, I believe your cat wants to get fed.
No, he wants to go out.
Oh, go out. Okay. Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Bye.
Anybody else have comments? There's also comments that are going into the chat box. And we will try to copy and paste all of that. I know that spoken comments are recorded. So if you have chat comments, we'll try to, I will do my best to incorporate all of those. So anybody else would like to raise their hand? I think I just saw somebody.
Rob May?
Yes, sir.
I'm not good at this technology, so I apologize. But if I may, this is the first time I saw these scenarios that you proposed tonight, but we did have a meeting at the Baker School a while back, and there was residents that, is any of that intake from the residents added to your scenarios that was at that meeting a while back? I know we had more residents at that meeting. This is before COVID, of course, and there was some elected officials at that meeting. Have you taken that effect as well?
A lot of the comments that we got from the residents was that we needed to add more green space. People were looking for green. A lot of the comments that we got were for things like adult recreation, gyms, community centers. So some of the things that required the city to make large investments were not included in this process. But again, if the city council deems that that's what we want here, I'm sure we can work with the mayor and city council to include that into a recommendation.
I know there was a few other city councils on back then. We've had newly elected officials since, but it was mentioned, our job as a state delegation was just to file this so the proceeds go to Massasoit Community College, but it's left up to the local city officials like the city council, yourself, the mayor, to decide in the zoning board if zoning changes need to be done. But I think it's important because there was a lot of residents at that meeting that did give input, and I know there are residents that are concerned about traffic, and there was some designs back initially to widen Quincy Street coming on for another lane, like a right turn only lane, a lane to go straight, and a left turn lane, and also to widen the entrance to Massasoit Community College. And I believe that some of the funding for the design was put forth, but I don't know if anything's been done beyond that. That's to do with that whole intersection there at Crescent and Quincy Street as well.
Yes, Senator, that is correct. The city is working on a design proposal to rebuild the intersection at Crescent and Quincy. One of the issues that we have, because Quincy and Massasoit Drive are slightly offset from each other, and there may need to be some additional property acquired to make one or two of those designs work. The mayor has asked DPW to go back to the consultant that Larry is working with, Larry Raleigh at DPW, to try to rework the project to require as little new right-of-way acquisition as possible. The project was requesting more space on the south side of Crescent Street, and it didn't necessarily affect the Quincy approach, but it was more about the Massasoit Drive where more property needed to be acquired. So we are taking a look at that, and hopefully we will get that back on track. And it is available for federal and state funding, which would be fantastic because we all know that whole intersection needs to be rebuilt. I have a a person with their hand up, and I am going to butcher your name, sir, but it's
It's Yolando. Yolando
Yolanda.
Spinolo.
Thank you, sir. Sorry about that. You have the floor. And you're muted, unfortunately.
Yep. So, hi, everybody. My name is Yolando. Thank you so much, Rob, for all the work that you have done on this, and I appreciate the consultants' work too. The scenario seemed like there's a lot of different options on the table for the city of Brockton. But speaking as a millennial and someone of the younger generation who is coming up in the city, I definitely am in favor of the options that are going to build more housing in our city. I like the idea of adding more units. We are in the middle of a housing crisis right now in Massachusetts. A lot of young people are having a hard time finding a place to live that's affordable, that has amenities next to it. And this is a place that would be close to hospitals, close to schools, close to a lot of shopping opportunities. This could be a great opportunity for the city to add more housing, and young people and older people too who need new housing to move out of maybe some of the older spots that they have. We would love to see them go into these new locations, and I think it'll just add more vitality to the city if we add more housing. And it's also great for revenue too. If we want to generate more revenue, this is a way to go about doing that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda.
Hi, Rob.
Counselor
Lisa?
Mendez? Oh, Lisa is waving.
Yes, Ben. Hi, I actually live adjoining the street. I'm not sure. And I understand what Mr. Spinola is saying. However, I think this is probably part of his job. Do you live in Brockton? You live in Brockton?
Yes, I do. I grew up in the city and I live in the city now.
Do you
Yes, I live in Brockton, Massachusetts.
all right, 'cause I just Googled mass planning, so that's why I asked. However,
I have nothing to do with this project.
okay. However, I'm adjoining the property, Rob, and I with a lot of other people in the city would like to see more commercial. Number one, since it's a higher tax base. And number two, our police department's overrun right now. Our fire department's overrun. We don't have critical services. I know what Mr. Thompson said, but I'm not sure that that's the case with the school department. But however, with that said, Brockton should not have to carry the load for Massachusetts with affordable housing. Can you tell me, Mr. May, what the percentage is now of affordable housing in Brockton?
Right now, I believe there is 12% of our housing units are registered income restricted.
Right.
Now, while we have been talking about different housing types here, we have not talked about either market rate or affordable units. We're just talking about density at the moment.
Mhm.
So just because we talk apartments doesn't necessarily mean that they're affordable, and that capital A affordable, as opposed to affordable that I can afford to live there.
Could you tell me
So
how many
that-
people, sorry, go ahead. How many people do you expect to be in this whole area?
The number of people that are expected to be in this area
Sure.
is the number that we as a group decide and city council supports. How's that for a political answer?
Yeah, that's bull S. I'm not swearing because I'm recorded. I'd like
No,
more.
I get it. So we've put together a couple of different scenarios
Mhm.
that we want people to react to. If there are, if there's a group of people who like certain projects and we don't like some aspects of other scenarios, we can mix and match those kinds of things. But
Yeah.
at the end, what's going to happen here when this gets disposed of by DCAM, in order to build anything other than pure retail, which is a bit difficult, or office space, which again is difficult, or something else. I'm sorry, my hand's going out of the frame as I'm gesturing. It's going to require support from City Council and from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And so whatever the group decides, you know, City Council is going to have to shepherd this at some point in time, and is going to have a large say if whatever happens on this site because of the way our zoning is written.
I do believe Brockton has more than 50% affordable units, and that's fine. I wouldn't mind seeing single family. If we're really trying to help people, let's do single family homes that they can afford. I'm not opposed to that, but I don't want to really look at another like 5,000 cars going up and down my street every day.
Sure, I understand that. If I may, Councilor Mendez had her hand up, and then we're going to follow up with Representative Dubois. So Councilor Mendez, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much. So what I wanted to say is, although I'm a representative of the city, I'm also in Nevada. I live right there on Portland Street, so I hear all of everyone's concern. And my neighbor on Portland Street, who could not attend to this meeting tonight, sent me an email with lots of questions. And I believe that her concerns is a lot of the concerns have already been addressed here tonight, but I'm still gonna read some of the things that she wanted me to address at this meeting. And I believe that was already explained earlier as to Quincy Street being classified as a medium traffic street. She is pretty sure, and I can also understand this, that Quincy Street is really a high traffic area, but I don't think any traffic study was done. That was just how it got classified in the project, from my understanding. But that was one of the questions. The other one was regarding the proposals 2 and 3, that they are much too dense, the parcels together, and there's absolutely no light coming through to Quincy Street in the plans, and that the buildings are too close together. And then as to the retails in the plans, how will that impact the intersections as to the retail stores in the plans? And also, my neighbor wanted to know what is happening to the Mutual Oil site and how will this project coexist with that. And also, I believe we discussed already regarding school capacity, how will that affect the school capacity in the area? And also whether the traffic effect of this project would affect the ambulances that comes from Whitman, Abington, and the Bridgewaters. And regarding green space, I believe there's not that many in green spaces in the projects, just asking some questions about that. And also regarding the fire station, if with the Caffrey Towers right across the street as to fire station, if they'll be able to handle it to be able to accommodate everything in the neighborhood there. And regarding this was not discussed, the property value of the homes in the neighborhood. And also her property is well water, if that is going to affect the water table in the area, because she does not plan to connect to the city hookups. So this is just some of the things list of questions that you wanted to make sure it got asked. I want to make sure that it goes in the record. And I understand that maybe not all of the answers may be provided tonight, but just so that we can be aware of those. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Mendez, Councilor Thompson did forward that list of questions, and that will be put into our report at the end. We'll be posting that information as we go along. I hope to have this video posted within 72 hours, and then I hope to be working on those questions, sort of a frequently asked questions, and we'll be posting that. And as we get more questions between now and the end of the month, as we hold this comment period open, we will continue to add to those frequently asked questions. Mich- Councilor Dubois is next online.
Buddy. So,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Rob and team? And Councilor Thompson, Councilor Mendez. I think I saw Ellie, John, and everybody out there in Zoom land. So I am here with Ann Beauregard, former Ward 5 City Councilor, and a couple other residents that live around here on the site. I'm very unhappy with the whole process. I think Senator timelining it, which, you know, there's some, you know, things that might be a little off, show that this has been a process and it has not been an open process. So I'm happy now that there are some meetings being had. I am holding this up in the House until we get more public participation and transparency written back into that bill. That is my job as a state representative. Everybody gets to decide what their job is, and my job is to make sure that residents are heard and that they're not trampled upon. And Mass General Law provides certain rules around transparency and public participation in the sale of public land, and I am going to hold to that. So unless the governor and the DCAM and everybody else, housing, wants to go through Mass General Laws as it lays out, which is very onerous, when most of us know within at least 60 to 70% certainty that we can come to an agreement, and it's just in that 40 to 30% that there is some disagreement. The idea that you know, folks like myself, a state representative elected by 40,000 people that live in 02302, which is this zip code, and beyond Jeff, and Rita now too, we're the only ones that live here in 02302. We want to make sure that we're engaged and we are part of this process, and that what happens on this lot isn't determined by people that don't even live in Brockton anymore. You can say that your interest is Brockton, but you don't even live here. So I just want to be sure that what happens here, I'm really determined to get the land that runs along Crescent Street and the land that runs along Quincy Street to at least one car length of a roadway to be given to the city, so we can expand the road as needed, especially if we're going to be putting a whole bunch of units of housing on the lot. There's 40 units of housing across the street that's already approved. We have, like, we're on the lot here, so down behind the car dealership, which probably should have never been, there's like over 100 acres of land back there. And there's a whole bunch of rumors about housing being proposed there. And then behind me, Massasoit has 100 acres on its own, and they've already talked about some potential about putting housing somewhere there. And then back over here, there's conservation land, but there are hundreds of acres of land, including the Lambert's Plaza, which I'm hearing could be becoming housing. So we're talking about this in this little fishbowl, and there's a lot of backdoor players going on. And I think we really need a comprehensive look at this. And yes, we do need housing, but it needs to be dignified. And we need to make sure that the people that live around here aren't left to hold everybody else's baggage. So, I mean, I agree. I've been very disappointed with this process and the backroom deals and the sneakiness on a lot of it, and having to have filed a Freedom of Information Act request with Massasoit to get the bill. All of this adds up to suspicion on my part. And so I'm honored to be a state representative, but I'm also going to demand that the people that live here get the respect that they deserve, which is
Well, we will
open,
catch up.
transparent participation. So here I am. I'm happy to be here. I am going to hold that bill up until we get some public what's going on and who's planning have to vote on it. So my plan now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Representative Dubois. Council President Asak has raised her hand. Council President Asak, you have the
Good evening.
floor.
Thank you, Mr. May. Good evening, everybody. My question to you, Mr. May, after listening to everything is, what's the next step after this evening? Is there more community meetings, or what do you think the plans are for, what's the next step?
Well, COVID is playing havoc with a lot of community meetings, but what we plan to do is this video will be posted on the city's webpage under the planning department. It'll also be on the Brockton Community Access and on Councilor Thompson's webpage or Facebook page. We are going to be continuing to take comments from now through the end of the month, at which time, and during that time, as we get more and more questions, I'll be creating a frequently asked questions FAQ that I'll post to the web also, and answers to that at the same time. And at the end of this month, I plan on then writing up a report that shows all the comments that people have made, and we will then make that available to the public and to City Council. We may then ask City Council what their pleasure is. We may want to look at some additional scenarios. As I said, this is kind of like our first run at this. I wish we could meet in person. I wish we could meet on site. Although it's kind of dark where Michelle is at the moment. But you know, a school would be nice one of these days. From a personal perspective, we have had COVID in the house, and so I'm very reluctant to meet in a large group, but we can find a way to take care of that, triple masking if necessary. Again, we're going to be looking at the various scenarios. We will talk to the counselors as to what their pleasure is, and certainly with Michelle, Representative Dubois, who represents the area, with Mike Brady, who represents the area, and with Councilor Thompson, and see what our next steps are after this. But nothing is happening tomorrow, or you know, there's not a deal waiting in the wings. We have some time to move this forward because, as you heard, the legislation has not been passed, but we hope that it will be sometime this calendar year. And when DCAM is ready to put this property out for bid, we certainly hope that we will have a vision for what Brockton wants for this site. And Brockton includes the residents that are adjacent, and it includes you know, the greater community. So I hope that's an answer.
Thank you. It is. That's exactly. I just want to make sure that we get the point across that this is just the beginning. Nothing is finalized, and that the conversations, you know, is starting. It's open, and that you're going to be adding comments before any decisions come to the City Council. So I think that's really important that the residents are at the table. This is the time to make their comments. This is the time to make the suggestions, and you know, be part of the process. So I understand it's a little difficult with Zoom, but thank God we have this technology and we're able to you know, be able to have these meetings. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the information. So I will be looking forward. I heard everybody's comments, and I'll also once you post some of the comments, and I look forward to hearing some of the answers to some of them, some of the questions, and you know, look forward to a future meeting regarding this site. So I know a lot of these projects are in wards, but they affect the whole city. So it's important that we have everybody's paying attention and everybody's listening to what the suggestions are, because they do affect the whole city.
Thank you,
Shirley,
Council.
Shirley, but that
Yeah.
said, right, and Rob, you can answer this, and I apologize, last minute thought. On Thatcher Street, where is that proposal right now?
Rob
The
should answer that.
the Thatcher Street proposal is currently under technical review, and all the city departments are sitting down with the developer and their team to hash out the departmental concerns. And it should be sometime, but this is September, October, November. It'll probably be November planning board when it comes back up for a public discussion.
So with this proposal, you're possibly up to 2,000 of units on the east side, correct?
Up to how many units?
Well, this is what proposing 1,500 and then another 300 and something from Thatcher Street.
There's approximately 175 on Thatcher Street. And
No, it's more than that.
I believe it's 175 on Thatcher. I will take a look at that when I get back to the office tomorrow.
Lisa, it's
Emily?
175.
I thought it was 232.
No.
Thank you, Deb.
Emily, what is of the proposals, of the scenarios that we're looking here, how many units are in the largest?
Yes, the highest scenario is scenario 2, and it's 192 units.
Right.
Okay, so 192 and 175.
192 times 2 people at least, or 3. You have to figure it that way. It's a lot of people.
Well, yes, but it's easier to count units.
No,
Right,
it's
so
not
that's
realistic.
That's 367 units, not including the other proposed projects going on here.
Right.
So
Yeah,
nobody
but
can,
somebody
nobody
said
thinks
2,000.
that's a lot for like a square mile?
Mm.
Guys, you're all who we put in
Everyone's
charge.
muted.
Well, and you can submit your comments online.
I'm looking for comments from my elected officials, I guess.
I think a lot more discussion has to take place. I agree with Council President Azak. This is a good start to a discussion of an issue that is still pending in the House of Representatives. I don't see it coming out anytime soon based on what Representative Dubois said. And I think there ought to be a lot more discussion. And I hope eventually we'll reach a point where we can have an in-person meeting with residents. I don't like making decisions based on discussions that are held by Zoom.
No, and I respect that, sir. But again, there's 400 units proposed within the next, by year end, they could be voted on. So I'm just asking you your opinion on that. In a mile area.
Okay.
If I may.
My opinion is what I said the other night regarding another development. I'd like to make Brockton better, not bigger. I'd like to do something for the people who are here now, continue the housing projects that are currently underway. But this particular project and another one that's being proposed that might be 250 to 300 apartments in the next 10 to 15 years. You know, we can barely handle the calls now for loud parties, fireworks. We have traffic accidents because of the density of the vehicular traffic in the city. We're having a building hit once a week. And I'm struggling to understand how adding more people is going to improve the quality of life for the people who are here now. Again, I'm just one of 11. I try to apply some common sense. I do listen to a lot of people around the city. And what I hear from people is, do something for us now. Help us have a better quality of life, a quiet neighborhood. So that's a lengthy opinion. And again, it may not prevail, but that's where I stand.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilor. I have Councilor Jack Lally. Jack, the floor is yours. And then I'm going to follow up with Councilor Nicastro right after that.
Thank you. No, I want to say, you know, I think I agree with, you know, what's been said, you know, just like what Councilor Farwell just said. This is a good start. we have to remember that this is not going to be a short process. This is going to be, this is going to be a lengthy process. Things are going to be vetted out. This is not, and it should not be any kind of a rush job. I would like to see more, I would have liked to see more of a commercial, of a business aspect. And I know that has been mentioned, but at the same time, we also have to make sure we are hearing from and really listening to what the professionals we've asked for professional takes on this. We got to make sure that, we make use of them. And if the professionals have concerns about how much, business can actually get done there, we do have to, keep an eye on that, keep that in mind. I think that it was great that this meeting was held. I want to thank Councillor Thompson for the invitation and for, trying to spread this as far and wide as he could. And I look forward to this continuing. But I think this is what it's about. In order to have a discussion, something has to be put forward. And Harriman, Mr. May, Councillor, Senator Brady, as an elected official who lives on this side of the city, I appreciate you starting the conversation and keeping things moving.
Thank you, sir. It is 7:24. I am going to go to Councilor Nicastro, and then on deck is Councilor Thompson with a wrap-up of the evening. I think he called it an intro as opposed to an intro. I thought it was kind of funny. Anyway, Councilor Nicastro.
Thank you. Very quickly, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to everyone and to listen to what everyone has to say. The planning's been very good. Thank you for your presentation, Emily, and company. And yes, Lisa, it's a wicked lot of units on both sides of Massasoit Community College. It may shore up Massasoit. They have been losing students and there have been concerns there. I understand, but what will it do to our city? That's right. And even though I would prefer not to see residential there, I don't know, demographics and other things have changed shopping patterns and retail patterns, and it will be very hard to get a lot of commercial business in there. I know for the last couple of years that Christo's restaurant, a great restaurant, was alive and kicking. They were having to shore it up financially because their business had dwindled so much. So for many reasons, I understand that we have to look at different things. But yes, it is a wicked lot of units, and we are looking at that. I believe in better, not bigger also. But, and we're watching really closely. Thatcher Street, the horses left the barn, terribly so. Too many units there, but that is what a prior council, one that I didn't sit on, approved. We go from there, and we're all watching closely. Truly we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. And to wrap up this evening, but certainly not to end the conversation, as we will be going on for multiple sessions, Councilor Thompson, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for the presentation, Harry, and thank you all for joining us this evening. Lisa, I want to answer your question by saying this. I think our city needs to have an overall plan on what is the right size of Brockton. I think kind of all it loose the side forest through the trees. We jump from one project to another project. We like this one, we don't like that one. But I think we need a larger conversation is what Brockton do we all want? We've stuff going downtown. We can agree we want our downtown to be residents and commercial and have culture from there. But then the question becomes, what about side of Brockton? I think from our discussions, we talked about what is the right size of Brockton. Brockton was developed, I believe, be at least back 50, 60 years ago. City of about 125, 130,000 people. Our infrastructure was built out to to accommodate that number of people. And so, at least according to the past census, we're down 95,000. Now, I think anybody actually believes that that's a number, but I believe that, there is room for growth in Brockton. And if we want the entities that the residents of Brockton are seeking, if we want to be able to support our fire, our police, and our school system, then we need to widen our tax base. Right now, due to the issues that Councilor Nestro talked about, and also the professionals we hired, Donahue into tap panel, Urban Land into tap panel, the University of Massachusetts Donahue Institute. They are telling us, and by friends that we see with their own eyes, commercial, specific retail is moving online. This area is too far away from 24 to be a place for office space. And as mentioned before, we have a lot of utilized commercial space in this area to begin with. So professionals are telling us what is best for this area is some type of residential development. Now, we're today to speak about type of residential development. We add an aspect commercial. What density level do you want here? But these are all conversations that we're going to continue to have. I think overall, we need to begin a conversation citywide about what is the capacity of Brockton and how to best achieve that capacity. Because if we're growing, potentially, we're dying. So
since you addressed me, okay, I'm not against growth. I'm against more just throwing more housing in to get more tax base from a developer, and they're going to leave it. And we're going to be stuck with all the problems like we are on most sides of the city already. I've been in finance my whole life. I'm fully aware of what people are shopping online, and I'm fully aware of that. But the city, and honestly, you'd have to have your head buried in the sand to think there's only 95,000 people, and the census, everybody completes it. And
I agree, but we need a citywide discussion. I think we just need a citywide discussion of what the right side of Brockton and how do we achieve that size. Take into account our infrastructure, our schools, our police and fire capacity. And I believe there's room for growth. And so we're going to keep on discuss this. You're right. Maybe density. Maybe we're not looking for 175, 200 units here. I think density is going to be a major issue here. But these are all issues that I think we're all going to further discuss. This to put some ideas at the table. And I'm looking forward to the comments. Anybody who wants to address any question, comments, you can reach me at jthompson@cbma.us. You can all reach me on my Facebook page. I want to thank everybody for appearing tonight, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Thompson. With that, it is now 7:30-ish. Again, it might be the end of the meeting. It is not the end of this conversation. So we will be continuing to take your comments throughout the rest of the month. You may have seen the plans. They are on the city's website under the planning department. Please share them with your friends and neighbors. And if you could address your comments to either Councilor Thompson or myself at planning@cobma.us with the subject line of Christos. I figure that'll be easier to do a search on Christos. And we will create a frequently asked questions section. We will be posting this video online, and we will be preparing a report at the end of the month where we will then go to City Council and ask them what they would like to do as next steps. So thank you all for participating and look forward to seeing you in the very near future. Thank you very much. Stay healthy, everyone.